And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and let's talk about Commander Damage, of course, in the Commander format, because that's only where it's actually relevant. I made a short a little while ago about a misconception, the biggest misconceptions about Commander Damage. And from the comments on that video, I realized I should probably make a full-on video about this because there actually is a lot to talk about. Now, the big misconception, of course, came with what Commander Damage actually is. So let's start from scratch in case someone who's never played Commander before is watching this video. Commander Damage is, of course, 21 damage from your commander. That number is 21, by the way, specifically, because when I first started playing the format, I'm like, shouldn't it be 20, which is half your life? No, it's 21, because originally, of course, this format, Elder Dragon Highlander, as it was originally known, was because you use those OG Elder Dragons as your commander, and they're all 7 power. So it is 3 hits from one of those Elder Dragons, or I guess any commander that has a 7 power. 3 hits from one of those gets you to 21. That's why it is 21, just for those who are curious why it is that number. Now, what I talked about in that video, of course, is that it is only combat damage, nothing else. That is the important part, probably the biggest misconception when it comes to Commander Damage that I was trying to clarify there, but perhaps I need to further clarify it. Because again, I saw a lot of comments and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a good point. That's also a good point, right? A lot of things about Commander Damage that people don't quite understand. First of all, we have to define what exactly combat damage is. Combat damage is damage done by an attacking creature during combat and nothing else. Any other damage done by your commander, and of course there's lots of commanders out there that are dealing damage in other ways, that does not count towards actual commander damage. That's probably the biggest misconception when it comes to commander damage. Even if I'm playing, say, my Gearson Starn deck, and I have a creature attack, a 1/1 creature that's going to get in for damage, my commander says whenever another source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, Gearson Starn deals 2 damage to that permanent or player. Now, of course, that ability is not commander damage. This commander would be even more busted than it already is if it was the case. But even during the combat damage step, if I get in for damage with my 1 power creature, that's going to deal exactly 1 damage to that player, and my Gearson Starn will trigger and deal 2 damage. And even though I'm dealing that damage during the combat damage step, still not combat damage. Combat damage has to be from an attacking creature. So there is no way around that. You got to be attacking with your commander and actually deal combat damage. That's the only way you count commander damage. As I pointed out in another video where I talked about Teferi's Protection and how commander damage can actually get around that because commander damage doesn't care about your life total. It only cares about that number. Just like with poison counters, right? Poison counters only care about that number 10. They don't care what your life total is. Commander damage is the same way. If I can get that number to 21, doesn't matter if you have 1,000 life, you're still going to lose the game, right? That's the whole idea behind commander damage. And Teferi's Protection, of course, says your life total can't change. Well, we don't care about that. Commander damage gets around that. Your life total can stay the same and you can still die from commander damage. And of course, it also says it gives you protection from everything, but protection specifically prevents damage. So anything that says damage can't be prevented, we'll get rid of that part as well, so you can still kill your opponent with commander damage. Furthermore, I recently talked about in my 10 deck ideas video about being able to steal your opponent's commander to kill them with their own commander. That will work as well. Commander damage is attached to each individual commander, and as the game goes on, you are counting the damage that is done to each individual player by that commander. It doesn't matter who controls it. So I can steal your commander, and if it's doing 21 damage, for example, I can attack with it, do you that one shot, and you will actually die to your own commander. You can absolutely do that in a commander game. Also, though, if you attack one of my opponents with your Ural the Miststalker, for example, dealing 11 damage, let's say, I can then steal your commander on my turn and then deal 11 more damage, giving 22 commander damage to that person. Even though it is a separate attack from 2 different players, it is still counting the overall commander damage done by that individual commander, right? That is all that really matters. The commander damage is attached to your commander no matter where it goes, no matter which side of the battlefield it's on, no matter which zone it is changed to, it is following it around throughout the entirety of the game. And that includes if your commander changes in any any way, shape, or form. If your commander is, say, a clone, that is still technically your commander, and it will still do that damage. However, if you're creating clone copies or token copies of your commander, that will not. The commander damage is attached specifically to that physical card. Any token copies or clone copies will not be included. So if I make 3 or 4 clone copies of my commander, those other token copies that I made are just doing normal damage. Anything I copy with my commander, if I'm playing like a Sakashima deck, or maybe that new master commander from Doctor Who, anything I copy, that is considered commander damage, because that's my commander. That actual physical card is what's dealing the damage. So any damage I deal, no matter what I'm copying, that is going to be considered combat damage from my commander. Therefore, it is commander damage. Again, each individual commander is dealing its own damage. I can't steal one person's commander and hit a guy for 11 and then steal a different commander and hit a guy for 11. That's not 22 commander damage. That's 11 from 2 separate commanders. The 21 combat damage has to come from that individual commander. It can't just be commander damage in general throughout the game. Each one is counting its own commander damage. That is very important as well. A really interesting scenario that someone mentioned in that video, someone cast this Song of the Dryads on my commander. Of course, that's going to turn it into a land, right? Well, that kind of sucks. I'm sure a lot of people have had that happen to them before. Enchanted Permanent is a colorless forest land. Pretty hard for me to do anything when my commander is just a forest with no abilities. However, that is still your commander, right? That commander tag is attached to that physical card as it travels around the table, zones, everywhere it goes. It's still your commander. So that colorless forest land is my commander. And if I can animate that land, and of course, there's lots of ways to do that. Let's say I turn it into a 3/3 creature, that is still my commander, even though it is a colorless forest land that has now been animated into a creature. So if I deal damage with it, that is commander damage, because that physical card is what's actually doing the combat damage. So that's important as well. Here's another fringe scenario, okay? Your background is your commander, right? Those are actually considered to be your commander. Whatever starts in the command zone at the start of the game, that's your commander. So again, if I have an Opalescence in play that animates my enchantments, yes, I can attack with my background commander, assuming it's actually your commander. Of course, you can have backgrounds in your deck that aren't your commander. It has to have started in the command zone, so it has that commander tag. So if I can somehow animate that enchantment and turn it into a creature, if I get in for combat damage, that again is considered to be commander damage, but again, separate from my other commander, right? I have my background commander and my actual background. Those two are separate. If I deal combat damage with my background because I've animated it into a creature, that does not add on to the damage that my background commander is doing. Those are separate, just like with partner commanders. I got 2 partner commanders. Those commander damages don't stack because I have 2 commanders. No, they're still separate. Each individual commander is dealing its own combat damage. So I will have to deal 21 combat damage with each of those commanders individually. They don't stack, they don't add. Also important to note, I think I have covered pretty much most of the scenarios involved here. And again, for someone who's been playing Commander for a long time, I guess I understand all this stuff and I don't realize how much nuance is involved in here and how many different little interactions that people can be confused about. Again, the big ones here are only combat damage. Your commander has to actually be attacking and connect with a player in order for it to be considered combat damage. That's the big one. Also, each individual commander is separate commander damage, whether it be my partner commanders or I've stolen my opponent's commander. Those numbers are all individually attached to everyone's commander, whichever commanders are involved in the game. And also, it doesn't matter what happens with my commander. If I'm cloning something with my commander, that's still my commander. If my commander has somehow been changed into something else through various effects, that is still my commander. That commander label is still attached to it. However, if I'm cloning my commander or creating token copies of it, that's not my commander, right? That commander label is specifically attached to that card that started in the command zone when I actually started that game. So I hope that clarifies a lot of things for you guys. Again, there was actually a lot more involved in this than I thought. So that's why originally I just made this short, because I was covering that main misconception, which is the whole combat damage thing. There's actually quite a bit more to cover here that I think is really, really important. So if you have any more questions, let me know in the comments below. But that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.